Hello, and welcome to the student section, chapter 3. This is going to be a teacher reflection. I'm Mr. Bettis at MP3 up there. Do the X underscore thing if you need it. And after experiencing chapter 1 and chapter 2 with Caleb Dinsman and Caleb Santos respectively, I thought it would be good to kind of sit up here and do a reflection. I watched both those episodes numerous times and really digested, because I was in the conversation, in the moment, and you can only take in so much. So the fact that I can go back and listen again to what they were saying to me really helped. And I've talked to both of them since that time, not just about the podcast, but just life in general. And I also asked them for some guidance on what I should probably talk about today as I reflect on chapter 1 and chapter 2. So it's just me today. Hopefully you stay tuned. If you haven't seen chapter 1 or chapter 2, please go tune in. Those are great conversations I had with two former students of mine. And now chapter 3, I'm going to be reflecting on some of that conversation and some other things they've talked about. And it's just me today, so hopefully that doesn't scare you away. Please like, share, and subscribe. I just want this to reach anybody who needs to hear it, and anybody who can benefit from it. I don't care if it blows up or anything like that, but I just feel if I can help at least one person, that's what it's about, just helping at least one person. So thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. And without further ado, let's dive right into it. So as a teacher, reflection is something that we are really told to do a whole lot of. We're evaluated on a lot of different things. But I think the big thing that we get pressure for is scores and data and test scores and, improving test scores and all that. So reflection is something we're told to do within our lessons. And most of your teachers probably do it, especially if you've been teaching something so long, like, hey, did this work? Maybe I should improve on this for next time or next year. And even like next week, because we have a lot to do what's called reteaching. So when we teach something and it just does not go in the heads, in the ears, does not get processed, whatever the case is. So a lot of times we're having to reflect and think about, okay, how can I approach this better, or how can I do something more effective for my audience? Because just because something sounds good and looks good, it doesn't mean it always fits your audience. And I think that's one of the most stressful parts about being a teacher, is having to reflect and see what worked and what didn't work, and choosing to do what's best for the learners in your classroom, while still trying to teach everything else and take care of yourself, and so much struggle there. But so I want to hit on Caleb Dinsman, my chapter 1. I think one of the biggest things he talked about was struggles with what he referred to as taboo. And these are like conversations of alcohol and drugs and sex and things that he was just not really ever exposed to conversations about. And I think that was, it was troubling to hear that. And when I listened in on it again, I'm just like thinking about how much that he probably struggled with that in his high school career, even middle school career. And nowadays you don't know when kids are being exposed to these things. So I definitely think it's something that is important for kids to feel safe and have a safe place to have these conversations. Because I think the scariest part, and I know a lot of parents probably feel it's scary to have one of their kids even thinking about these things, but the truth is they are. The truth is it's out there. The truth is their peers are talking about it. So instead of coming from a place of fear and not wanting them to know about it, or pretending that they will never know about it, or only whenever you're ready, I think it's better to approach it from, let's give these kids, these students, knowledge of these things that are kind of uncomfortable topics, so that they can make the best decision, so that they are aware of what happens and what goes on. And let's not come from a scary place. Let's come from an informational place. Knowledge is power, right? But how do we expect these young minds to make good decisions on these topics that they have no exposure to? Now, some may, some parents probably do talk to their kids about this stuff, but if you're not talking to them about it, and it's not happening in the classroom. It's coming from their peers and what their peers know of it. So, and I think they do sometimes like those little seminars, and they bring guest speakers in and stuff like that. But I think it's much more valuable for it to come from somebody they're close to, somebody they're comfortable with, somebody they respect, somebody who's willing to get a little uncomfortable and dive in deep to these struggles, because it comes from a place, coming from the heart, I guess. Not coming from, it's real, it's genuine. It's not just some guest speaker coming in saying, "Don't do drugs, kids, they're bad." It's coming, and they're not all like that. You get some really good ones out there who share their stories and things like that, but I think it hits closer to home when it's someone they are close to. And so I don't know if teachers are the people to have these conversations with, and maybe if you get close enough to a student, they might, open up to you about it. But I mean, as close as Caleb Dinsman and I were, he never, went to that topic. He never, brought it up, and I don't know how I would have responded had he did, because as his teacher, as I want to be there for them, and I want to help them as much as I can, and give them the knowledge they need, not just in the content I'm teaching them, but in life. I want them to be good people. I want them to leave better than they were when I met them, when I started teaching them. I don't know how I would have addressed that conversation, because it's a sticky conversation. But hearing him now as an adult, things that I can talk to him about, it's different. But as a kid, as a student, and it's sticky, because you got to think, what are the parents are going to feel? What do the parents want to have this kid exposed to, and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of what he was making a point of, is that it's good for these young minds to have these conversations, to have people talking about them, because if not, they're just making, ill-informed decisions, things they don't know really the gist of what they're doing, because they only know what they're being told, or what they've heard, or what they've seen. And nowadays with social media, with things that are on TV, and I can only imagine. So I mean, and it all just depends on who how they're being raised, and this and that. There's a lot of different variables, but it just made me think, how, as educators, and kind of like, what's our role in that, and how do we make it a comfortable place for these students to be exposed to that, to be informed of that. And definitely has to be some parent agreement there, for sure, or guardian agreement. But yeah, I think it was good to hear that, because students do struggle with these things, and I think students, again, I think having knowledge of something is the biggest thing. And so it made me reflect on that, like, how do we do that where everybody's kind of on board? But I think the reasoning behind it is because of that, is because I think the best decisions are the ones that are coming from people who are informed about and knowledgeable about the consequence, or the circumstance, the reaction to their action, for lack of a better phrase. And something that Caleb Santos had talked about was, he struggled with finding himself, and I don't know if that ever goes away in life. And as I was reflecting on it, I guess you would hope that, yeah, you can help students find out who they are, a little bit about themselves, and it all has to do with life experiences and things of that nature. But I think at the very least, you want to make sure you're a person in their life whom they can go to, when they can talk to, when they're uncomfortable, or when they're scared, or when they're experiencing something, when they're struggling with something. Because Caleb Santos, went through things when he was, I think he said it was a sophomore. He experienced, losing his grandpa, whom he was really close to. And like, I'm just not sure, how could he have been guided? But and I think back to when I was a student too, and I was grieving when I lost my great grandma. She was the first person, real, death experience I experienced. Loss of a loved one I experienced. And as a freshman, you know, so I mean, we're all different. We're all different in our ages, and we're all different in how we cope and identify with stuff. But yeah, I don't remember, you know, ever having somebody tell me like, hey, if you need somebody to talk to, I'm here for you, or I know what you experience, and I know all my teachers knew. Well, maybe not my great grandma, but when I lost my grandpa, because I had sent out emails to my teachers letting them know I was going to be out and the reason why. And the responses are most. I think all of them responded to the email very, considerate, very comforting. Like, take care of your family, Jeff, or just take care. Just don't worry about your schoolwork. Don't worry about this, because that's what I was emailing. Like, hey, I'll catch up when I'm back. Like, I promise. And so they responded in that manner. But as far as a conversation down the road, I don't think that ever happened. I don't think anybody ever reached out. It was like, hey, like, if you ever need someone to talk to, and I was close to some of my teachers, so it was, I guess. Yeah, and again, another sticky topic, right? But just in general, like helping somebody find themselves, like, yeah, I guess I'm not a guidance counselor, and I probably ain't qualified, but I think at the very least, a teacher can help mold you. A teacher can help, maybe see what some of your interests are. And I mean, like I said, it's not like these things aren't happening in some of these bigger schools and other schools, but there's always going to be those students who feel like they're out of place, or they're left behind, or they're not involved in that group that does get what they need. And so instead of letting these students slip through the cracks, how do we catch them before they fall too deep? So that's kind of what I wrote. My biggest takeaways from both of their chapter 1 and chapter 2, and my reflection on it. And still playing with ideas in my head on how we can do that. I've talked to them about it as well, but it's just to think about young students, kids who are dealing with these things, these topics, these situations, these identity crises, and how much pressure that puts on them. And of course, as teachers, we're feeling pressure from the academic side of things, and we're going to push this knowledge onto them. But I think more importantly, we have to make sure these students are ready to take on the world. And especially recently, when COVID happened, the pandemic, like, you saw mental health was a serious issue. How do we get students to really start talking about these things, to really start feeling comfortable enough to say, hey, I have an issue, or hey, I'm struggling, or I'm scared. I don't know how to handle this. I feel lost. I feel unaccepted. I feel judged. I feel uninformed. Whatever it is they're going through, like, and I think it's important for our students to know. And I think during that COVID pandemic, you probably saw it a little bit in your teachers and parents and stuff, but because that was a scary time for everybody. I remember I was scared. I was like, because life changed. It just, in an instant, life changed. And I remember it was actually right after, spring break. We never came back from spring break that year, here in Texas. And I remember I was on a trip, because it was right before things started shutting down. And in the middle of my trip, things start shutting down. And, I get back from my trip, and, I'm just at home now. I'm homebound, and everything's closed, and it's just wild. And, I was scared, man. I was scared. I was like, what is going on? I don't know what to do. I don't know. And very vulnerable. And I think it's important for students to know, like, your teachers are human. Like, I promise you, we struggle with stuff. I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with feeling lost. I struggle with feeling scared. I have breakdowns. And as much as, probably be easier to not admit and just act like, my life's a breeze. Like, no, it's not. I still struggle to this day. Like, I wish I could say it gets easier. I wish I could say, man, it's all rainbows and sunshine, but it's not. Life is hard. It is a freaking struggle. And so, I think the important part there is do something you love. Do things that make you happy. Be a good person. There's a lot of evil and negativity in this world. There's a lot of things that are going to get you down. There's a lot of things that are going to beat you up and try to tear you apart, literally. So it's important for you to get yourself away from as much of that negativity as you can possible and surround yourself with positivity and be that ray of sunshine. Make somebody's day, make somebody smile, make yourself smile. Like, even when you feel like you are about to break, just kind of keep hanging in there. Tell yourself it's going to be all right, even when you feel like it's not. Because if you can do that, you're giving yourself a chance for whatever comes your way, right? Like, I think it's important for me to admit this as a teacher, because I want my students to know, like, hey, we're in this together. Like, this thing called life, yeah. I'm really no better off than you. Like, I can help you so much. I'm gonna do what I can to help you. But there's gonna be times where I need help too. Like, it's just true. It's just true. So don't ever think you're alone. Don't ever think there's not somebody going through exactly what you're going through, because it might even be one of your teachers who's going through exactly what you're going through. So don't be afraid to ask for help. That's something Caleb Dinsman kept saying. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And know that your teacher wants what's best for you. In most cases. At least I believe that. And while, we're feeling pressure about test scores and making sure you're learning and this and that, like, I think the biggest thing about me as a teacher, the biggest thing I want to do is to make you a better person. I want to make you feel safe. I want to make you feel comfortable. I want to make you understand that I care about you. I want to show you that I care about you. I want to be there for you. Like, at the end of the day, like, if you don't learn, I'm a math teacher. If you don't learn a lick of math, but you learn how to care for somebody, or how to, if you learn that I care about you, you learn that you can come to me for stuff, I personally will still chalk that up as a win. Maybe not a lot of other things and other places will, but to me that means something. To me that's value. And both, another big takeaway from both of those, chapter 1 and chapter 2, was that not one of them ever mentioned, oh yeah, the most impactful teacher is the one who taught me calculus, the one who taught me Pythagorean theorem, the one who taught me how to write a paragraph essay. Like, no, it all had to do with the teachers who were going out of their way to be there for that student. And maybe not, maybe that starts with helping them with academics, staying for tutoring or giving them extra guidance or whatever. But I think it goes beyond the curriculum. And Dinsman mentioned that as well. And Caleb mentioned that as well, but not in those exact words. But he talked about that personal touch with his teacher who would play basketball with him. And so it's like, I think that bond goes such a long way. The rapport you can build with these students goes such a long way. And it's beyond the classroom. It's beyond the years of the teacher. I still have contact with these two young men. I haven't taught them in 2 years. So, fit in the classroom taught them, I guess. But, now they're teaching me things. And now it's cool. Like, so that's what I want. That's my goal, is to create a relationship with the student so that they know that I'm here, not just in the time being that I'm your teacher. I'm here for you down the road. If you need to hit me up. And you need a reference, hit me up. You need help making that resume. While I'm not the best, I will do everything I can to help you. And that's kind of what I want to create. I think that's something that teachers aren't valued enough on. We're so pressured about the scores and this and that. And there's a lot of talk right now about teacher pay and teachers incentives, and people talking about, oh well, teachers don't deserve more pay. They get the whole summer off. They get this and that. And it don't matter what side of your argument you're on. I'm not going to talk about that. But what a lot of people don't understand is, because they never walked into teacher shoes, is that they don't understand those 2 months off aren't really just 2 months off. Like, and that winter break that you get 2 weeks off, I promise you, those first few days, that teacher's probably going home and just trying to rejuvenate, just trying to hang on. And that can happen in the middle of the year, and kind of stuff. Like, it is that stressful. And when you don't have the greatest work environment, and you have all these other obstacles, all these other hoops you're having to jump through. It could just be the worst thing, the worst feeling as a teacher. And you can feel like, you could be putting in 50, 60 hours work 50 and 60 hours of work a week and still feel like a failure because of what people are telling you, because of what you're being evaluated on, this and that. And so I think something that is starting to kind of make, a trend is student voice. And I think teachers aren't held liable a whole lot in how well they make that student feel, how safe they make that student feel, how comfortable they make that student feel, how much does that student value that teacher. And I think that's something that teachers deserve to hear more of. Like, hey, you did really good working with so-and-so that day. Hey, so-and-so was having a breakdown that day, and you kind of helped turn them around, helped turn their day around, and they were able to function the rest of the day. The little things when you walk into a teacher's classroom and I have a student's head on the desk, whatever, because whatever reason, it's like that's a thing between the student and I. Like, I know something they're going through that you probably don't know, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with them having their head down for that first 10 minutes or whatever they need to regroup. Sometimes your teachers just want to put their head down for 10 minutes. Like right now, like at this time of day when it's towards the end and you're barely hanging on, and oh man, I could go for a nap. I could go for, let me regroup. And so, I think it's important, because it's not realistic to think that, we can go through these long days in the classroom for, especially if you got, hours in the same classroom, like, and not allow our students to have a brain break, like, and teachers too, like, man, give me a little brain break, give me a little restroom break, man, like, I just gotta go pee, like, help me out. And so, I just think there has to be more of an emphasis on self-care for everybody, for teachers, for students, for administrators. Like, I know there's pressure across the board. I know that. Like, it's not that I'm neglecting that. It's not like I'm just saying, pretending it's not there. No, I know it's there. And I know there's, certain academics that we need to teach the students. I know there's importance to everything we're being told to do. There's something there. Usually is. But it's like, that doesn't mean there's not other important factors in what we need to be doing for our students and what we need to be allowed to do as teachers. That's just something I feel. I feel like we deserve more of a say. Students deserve more of a say, and because it's a struggle. Life's a struggle. I felt like during the pandemic, that was a good time to really figure it out. Hey, things are going wrong. Things are changing. Where was the emphasis during the pandemic? It wasn't state testing. It was on making sure the students have contact with their teacher. They have some kind of interaction, right? The emphasis was on interaction, engaging with their teachers, students, whatever, however you want to see it. But because that's what we lacked. And I guess the first few weeks, yeah, it wasn't a big deal. Like, oh no, it's kind of cool, like extended vacation. But I think students really started to really need that classroom setting again, or that teacher, end of life again. And I was really sad during the pandemic because, I didn't get to see my students. I didn't get to, a lot of them didn't join my Zoom calls, and, because the internet issues, they weren't required to, a lot of different factors. But I missed that, man. And everybody talked about, they missed the face-to-face interaction. Nobody's saying, oh yeah, I missed the state testing. Oh yeah, I miss learning whatever. Like, I'm not saying those things aren't important or whatever, but, and I'm not going to go into that because I have, whatever kind of view I have. It may not be the ideal teacher view on it, but that's my personal view. And like, if that wasn't something we're emphasizing during a freaking pandemic, why are we emphasizing it post-pandemic? Right? Am I preaching to the choir here? I don't know. So, yeah. So, and bringing back up the pandemic and, how we went to online, and like I said, I worked in a more rural area, so our students weren't necessarily required to be on a Zoom, and part of it's they couldn't. Their internet connection was just so bad. So I didn't get to communicate a whole lot, like, and I think everybody was kind of, and I get it, everybody was it was a new situation. Nobody knew what was the right thing to do, what was the way to go about it. And I think our district was just following what, you know, whatever they were being told they had to do. But a lot of some of it just seemed, you know, ridiculous. Like, you know, I don't remember exactly what we had to do, but you know, we definitely had to call parents and try to talk to parents and try to talk to students, and I get it again why it's important, but I think deep down it was kind of a struggle to do everything that was required of me, because I think deep down we were all, you know, not sure. The uncertainty was what scared everybody. What's gonna happen? You know, this deadly virus going around, and you know, I'm being told to still check in with my kid and make sure they're learning Pythagorean theorem. So, like, you know, but I mean, calling, you know, when I called parents, like, you know, sometimes, you know, the parents would tell me about stuff that they were dealing with. Like, you know, one time I was talking to a student's mom, and she worked in a hospital. She was a nurse, and it's like, obviously, you know, yeah, she's thinking about her kids. She wants them to be taken care of, and she wants to make sure they're doing their work and learning and stuff. But during the height of the pandemic, you really think she was focused on, hey, make sure you turn that paper in on Google Drive with our crappy internet connection? When she's seeing people lose their lives, she's seeing family members not being able to say goodbye to their loved ones, and afraid to bring that virus home with her to her kids. Like, those are tough calls to make. Like, why were we so focused on that? Why were we not more focused on, you know, hey, let's make sure your kid's okay? And I did that anyway. Like, that wasn't my requirement, but that's what I was doing. So, like, my role as a teacher goes beyond teaching you math. Like, you know, I want to teach you how to deal with things. I want to teach you that, you know, we all struggle. I want to teach you that, you know, there's people out there who you can relate to. I want to teach you that even if it's not me directly, there's people who can help us when we struggle. You know, like, there's people out there who can guide us when we're lost. And there's hope for us when things are crazy as heck out in the world. And it goes back again to what I was saying, like, you know, we are human. Like, I was scared too. Like, and having that little phone conversation or that 5 minutes on a Zoom call was the highlight of my day. I think during the pandemic, and I don't know if enough students know that, like, when kids would join their Zooms or answer the phone or respond to the email, like, those are some of the best moments for us. Like, most teachers, yeah, of course, we love to be in the classroom. We want to be in a classroom. We want to interact. We didn't want to do the Zooms. We didn't want to be on a computer screen and, you know, have to try to teach. It's harder to teach that way. You know, it's already hard to teach. Teaching is difficult, you know, alone. So having to do that through a Zoom, like, just added so much more, you know. But I think the connection is what we missed, you know, and I think this was the students too. They missed the connection. They probably didn't miss the content. I think I have a lot of kids who typically wait until they don't have me as a teacher anymore, but some even during, like, hey, no, I hate math, but you're okay. Like, I like your class. I don't like your class, but I like you, kind of thing. And that's what it's about. It's a connection. Because even if you're not, you know, rocking it in math's not your thing, that's fine. I still want to be cool with you. I still want to be a teacher for you. I still want to be somebody you can turn to. You know, it's more than just teaching you the content. You know, it's much more than that. It's about connecting with you. It's about helping you become a better human being, help you become a good citizen, a good person. And, you know, I think as teachers, because we get so bogged down with everything else and we have so much pressure on everything else, you know, sometimes it's hard to remember, like, we're here to make that connection. And sometimes teachers just throw it out the window completely because they don't think there's time for it, and it feels like there's no time for it. So, you know, whatever side of the ballpark you're on, I think you got to think about, you know, your kids spend the most of time throughout their day and throughout their life in a teacher's classroom. And what kind of teacher do you hope is there? Do you simply want somebody who's just going to teach them the curriculum? Somebody, and maybe they're a master at it. Maybe they're so good at it and they can teach it so well. And that's probably something you want. But, you know, what about that personal connection? Because what if you're a master at teaching the content, but you have no way of getting through to your students? You have no way of connecting with them. And so you're going to get the students who are going to be good students, regardless of who their teacher is, and going to learn the content. You're probably going to do really well with those students. But what about the students who need that connection, who seek that connection? You know, what about them? Like, how is that class going to go for them? And do you not value, as a parent or a guardian or as an uncle or grandpa or whatever, do you not value even a little bit that that teacher can connect with your kid, your niece, your nephew? Like, yeah, I hope they're teaching them well. I hope they're doing what they're supposed to. And I think at that small community school where I taught both the Caleb's, I think a lot of the parents did value that. I think they've cared more that you cared about their kid. You went to their games. You know, you showed up. You stayed for tutorials. You sent out messages to them. You kept them informed about what was going on. More than the fact, like, oh yeah, he got him to pass that test. And I think that's the struggle of a teacher. Like, there has to be a fine line. Like, yeah, I want my students to do well. Even if they don't like the subject, I want them to be able to do it. Like, that is definitely a goal of mine. But even more so, I want them to be able to connect with me. I want them to be able to not be afraid to ask me for help. That's a big thing. Because how can you help a kid who's afraid to ask for help and you have no connection with? And so it's a struggle to find the balance when you're being told from the higher ups, like, no, you must do this, you must do this, you need to teach this, and they need to make this score, they need to have this score, they need to improve this much. And, you know, I can't even get the kid to ask for help because I need to make that connection first, or whatever it is. Or they're afraid to make a mistake, or they've had experiences in the past where they felt it wasn't okay to make a mistake, and it traumatized them, or whatever it is. And I think it's a struggle for, you know, at least that was one of my biggest struggles, is trying to not only be there for the kid and teach them the content, but, you know, deal with the heat, the pressure you're feeling. And so taking care of yourself is a big thing, and that's why I talked about self-care already. But that's one of the biggest struggles. Teachers get burnt out. Teachers get stressed out, and you look at the statistics, and you start seeing a lot of teachers dropping the leaving the world of education within the first 3 years. Like, that number's getting higher and higher. Hell, I almost left after my second year. So it's like, why? Like, you know, what is happening that this is going on? And I think a lot of it has to do with that. You know, and during the pandemic, at first, teachers were being, you know, loved on and respected and cheered on. Like, yeah, they're great. And then when it continued, and, you know, it kind of took a turn for the worse. So I just think that unless you've been in an educator's shoes, you know, it's hard for you to really relate to them, and understand them. And also the pressures that they feel. And I think another thing we struggle with is, you know, a lot of people are making these decisions, and I worked for administrators who were above me, who couldn't make it in the classroom. You know, they weren't even, you know, they couldn't do it. And it's like, so how, you know, think about I'm thinking a construction crew, right? And you have a foreman, you know, the leader of the crew, who's telling you to do this, this, and that, and they don't know how to make a proper cut of the wood. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much are you going to trust that foreman? No, you're probably not. You're probably going to have little respect for them, because you know that, you know, when things get crazy, they're not going to be able to fully relate to you. They're not going to be really, they're not going to really have your back. You know, they're not going to know what to do. Think about, you know, in a fast food service, you have a manager. You know, most of those managers are promoted from working, you know, down lower. They were the fry cook. They were the cashier or whatever. You know, so like when it comes down to business and things, you know, you're in a rush. You're not going to trust a manager who can't go and be on the grill for a little bit, or who refuses to go, or who, you know what I mean? You want somebody down there who's willing to get in enemy lines with you. And I'm making this sound worse than it is, but, you know, like, yeah, like, truthfully, like, when I'm struggling with a student, I don't want somebody who's just going to, you know, gripe at me. I want somebody who's going to be experienced enough to show me how to do better, how to grow, who's willing to take that time. And I get it, they feel pressure too. But if they don't have the experience, they don't have the knowledge of it, why am I going to trust them? They're not making the time, the effort. You know what I mean? So that's something I struggled with. I had people who were above me, who were basically evaluating me, who weren't willing to help me grow, or who didn't know how to teach me how to grow. So how are you evaluating me on how I can help somebody grow when you yourself cannot even help me grow? It depends on your district. It depends on your higher ups. But even at the top of the top, people making decisions about the state testing, a lot of those people have never been in a classroom since they graduated school. And I think that's another big struggle for teachers is having to wrap our minds around the fact that we're having these big decisions made by people who aren't in the classroom, who don't know what it's like. And it's kind of like when you think about people who are out of touch with reality, and like that's what it is. Like, they're out of touch with teaching, they're out of touch with education. Like, they don't remember what it's like to be in the classroom, or they never were. And that's a struggle, because that's who's evaluating you, or that's who's making these decisions that what you have to do in the classroom. I think more value comes from what the students' needs are, and who better knows it than the students themselves, or the teachers who are also in the classroom with them the whole time. I think that's where the decision making should come from. It should generate from what students need, based on what they say, and based on what the teachers can see, because we spend the most time with them. Now, how to overcome that stuff? You got to keep hanging on. It's going to be all right, kind of deal. Like, hopefully it works out. Hopefully you get people in there who are willing to go to bat for you. Hopefully you get people who are truthfully there for you. But a lot of times it seems like you're going to have to put in some time where it's not so great. You're going to have to put up some time where you're going to struggle, and you're not going to have somebody there for you. And, you might be put in a sticky situation as a teacher, and it's not fun. I had a job where I hated going to work. And, not completely, because no matter how bad my teaching jobs got, I always enjoyed being there for the students. But, you're going to have these experiences where things just aren't fair, things aren't right, and you're going to want to quit. You're going to say, forget this, I don't need this, right? I don't get paid enough. And to those, I challenge you to think back in those times when you're struggling. Think back to why you wanted to be there. Why did you want to be a teacher in the first place? You didn't do it for the pay. You didn't do it to get a pat on the back from your administrator. We do it for the students. We do it because we want to make an impact on students. I had a wise young lady tell me one time, who's now working as a teacher assistant, teacher aide in elementary schools. When she struggles, she said that this is what she tells herself: be the person you needed growing up. So be the teacher, the educator you needed growing up. And I was just like, whew. And I told her I was going to use that. And that kind of stuck with me. Like, that is great. That is awesome. Yeah. Because, who better to know what these students need than people who had a need when they were young? That was the whole point of the student section. Like, let's do stuff that, let's be the people we know we needed growing up. And so the fact that now she's doing that for other students in this same district I'm actually working for, that's pretty cool. I'm glad they have her. They're very blessed to have her. And I think that's what we need to come back to when times get hard for teachers and educators, when times are just, oh no, like I'm about to break. Think back to that. Think back to why you're there in that classroom. Think back to why you're doing this. And don't lose sight of it. Don't let anybody let you astray, lead you astray because of bad leadership, because of being unfair, because being out of touch with reality. Be that educator you needed growing up, right? That can kind of help. Remember why you're there. Stick to your roots. Don't let it change who you are. Do what you got to do, but remember why you're there, and go all in with that. Put your heart fully into the reason you're there, which is the students, right? I feel like anybody who's, gotten into education and really wanted to be in education, that's why they're there, because they want to be there for the students. And wouldn't you want that, right? As a guardian, as a parent, as whatever, you want your students to have teachers who are there because they want to be there, who are there because they want to help your student. They want to make them better, right? And so it's important for teachers to not only feel that, know that, but be reassured of that, because you want the teacher to be their best self, right? Self-care. So if you're a guardian or parent or aunt, uncle, let those teachers know. And if you're a student, let those teachers know. Hey, I appreciate you. I know you're struggling, right? You don't show it. Maybe you do, right? Sometimes it's hard to hide. But, you're great at what you do. Thank you for being here for me. Thank you for just showing up. Especially the ones who are putting in the extra effort and staying after school to have a conversation with you. Staying, the ones who are staying on your behind because they want you to do better. They're not doing it just to be mean to you. No, they care about you. Right? No, we're pushing you for a reason, because we see your potential. We're pushing you because we want you to reach it. Don't take it as a bad thing. We want to help you. We want to make you better. So reassure them. Let them know they're making a difference. They're making an impact, because it goes a long way. And if you're listening to this and you are an educator, I promise you it's not going unseen. Even though it may feel like that, even though you may not hear it nearly enough, keep hanging in there. It's going to be all right. Keep being the person you needed growing up. So that's kind of all I have for you. A teacher's role, an educator's role is, whatever they can make it to be, I guess. We all have certain standards we have to hit, and certain areas we're supposed to teach, but I think the biggest thing is a lot of the teachers, they see their role as, just being somebody who's there for you, being somebody to support you, being somebody to love you. And they're not always valued for that. They don't always get the credit they pretty much never get credit for that. So, if you have a teacher like that, go thank them. And I, as a teacher, and I think every teacher is different. Their comfort level is different. So their role in their classroom with you might be different than my role in my classroom with you. It really just depends on the rapport. It goes back to that relationship. How close are we? How much am I willing to, talk to you about? How close, you know what I mean? I'm not going to just sit up there and have a conversation with all of my students that I might have with you, because you and I might have gotten closer. We might have some connection, right? And that's okay. You're not going to connect on the same level with every student, but as long as you're doing what you can, you're being there for every student, that's what matters. But one of your students they're not really vibing with you. They're going to be vibing with the English teacher or the art teacher, history teacher, whatever. That's fine. I think I think the important part, and I think educators can agree, they just want at least one adult in that school setting to be able to impact a student. I twist some words. I think we really want every student to feel like they at least have one adult in that building that they trust and love and care for and feel comfortable with. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a teacher. It could be a counselor. It could be a teacher's assistant. It could be the cafeteria lady. It could be the librarian. Who's to say what their job role has to be? And I tell you what, I had a lot of friends growing up who, when they got in some trouble, did some things they weren't supposed to be doing, and the person they probably trusted most on campus was the in-school suspension teacher. And there's something wrong with that, and it's really cool to think that a person who was taking this role as a ISS teacher, that is who they connected with the most. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all have different ways of connecting with students. We all have different backgrounds that make us more qualified to connect with certain students. And sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes, no matter what, you're just going to form a connection with a certain student, and that's okay. I think the important thing is every student deserves that connection with at least one person on campus. So you never know who which students you're impacting. Like, sometimes the students don't even tell you anything. So don't think you're not doing a good job, and keep on keeping on, because the very end of the day, you might be impacting the student you think you're impacting the least, right? I think we always got to keep that in mind. So no matter what it is you're going through, students or teachers, I promise you there's somebody who can relate to you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to admit you're struggling. Don't be afraid to admit to your students that you are human. Connect with them. Let them know. Let them know you hurt too. Let them know you struggle too. Be vulnerable. And students, don't be afraid to give your teacher some reassurance. Don't be afraid to open up to them. Don't be afraid to trust them. Treat them like a human being. Don't be afraid to ask them for help. Well, I think that's going to wrap up. Well, one more point that I'm just going to add on to. I think it's also important, when I'm talking about these relationships, and I think it's important for the student body to be able to see people in teaching and education positions who not only they can relate to, for whatever reason, but who look like them, the demographics, right? Like, how crucial is that? Like, if you have a student body majority Hispanic, and you have one Hispanic teacher on, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I think it's important that we match the demographics. Like, let's get teachers who can relate to them because of their backgrounds even. I'm not saying that's going to be an instant connection, because it's not. It's still going to take work and other things, but I think students seeing people that look like them helps, right? Seeing students that look like them in a educator position, right? Like, that helps. At least I think it does. Let's run the statistics. I don't know. All right. Well, that's all I got for you today for the student section, chapter 3, teacher reflection. I hope you enjoyed. I hope the audio was decent, because I feel like I've been talking kind of quietly because I'm in my classroom and I didn't want to disturb other teachers. Now, this is an off day for students, so it's just teachers on campus. Don't think I'm like in the middle of my school day, like, I kicked all my kids. Nah. Or I have students in the background. No. But yeah, so hopefully everything. If you're still listening, thank you. Like, share, and subscribe. It's been fun. This has been good for me. I hope it's helped you. No matter what you're struggling with, I promise you there's hope. There's beauty in the struggle. You just gotta find it. Every obstacle is a lesson and a blessing. Take care of yourselves. Hang on. Remind yourself it's going to be alright. That is all I got for you. Chapter 3. Thank you for listening. I really do appreciate your support. This is Mr. Bettis signing off. I love you. Take care. Till next time. Adios.